So we have a very prestigious oration in the name of Dr. Swan Gans. I think I should not make an introduction here about Swan and Gans, who was Swan and who was Gans. They're very popular people, and both of them were very close colleagues. And Swan Stent Catheter, you all might have learned about it. I had a great privilege of working with both Swan as well as Gans. Both have passed away now, and they were great guys, great academicians, and very eminent people. And I think this oration, most prestigious oration, is best bestowed upon none other than Dr. O.P. Yadav. Dr. O.P. Yadav does not need any introduction. He is a orator par excellence. He is the CEO of National Heart Institute and a very, very eminent orator, a great speaker, and a very powerful academician. None of my meeting is complete without OP. Before I request him to give this oration, I'll request Vijay Lakshmi to put on the medallion, and Vijay, please join. Vijay to join and put the medallion. Come this way. I'll say Kushal also to please join. Kushal, please join. Thank you very much. With this, I'll request Dr. O.P. Yadav to give this prestigious oration on the subject, Redo CABG, Outcome and Challenges. Dr. O.P. Yadav, sir.
Good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. We all know, I'm going to use for the information the left side or to your right side screen, because the laser pointer can point to only one screen. Now, coronary atherosclerosis, we know, is a progressive disease, and all forms of intervention, be it coronary artery bypass surgery, be it percutaneous interventions, they are all palliative. And at 10 years, nearly half the grafts are blocked and the balance half are severely diseased, and most of the patients have angina, with 1/3 requiring redo surgery. Now, because of multiple factors, the incidence of redo in 1980s and 1990s was increasing steadily, and it was around 2 to 5% in European experience and roughly 10% in American experience. But in India, sort of, it's been lagging behind, partially because surgeons may not be reluctant to take to redo. Centers are few and far between, financial matters, and currently we are doing just 2% of our coronary workload as redo. But lately it has shown a declining trend because of the incidence of percutaneous interventions has increased, and we are now called upon to do redo surgeries in much limited number of cases. Now, post-operative angina can be classified into 3 categories. One is very early, which occurs within 30 days, and most surgeons, they are reluctant to admit to this, but it is either because of a thrombus formation, or it is because of a technical error while creating the anastomosis, so that we caught the back wall and the graft was not flowing in the first place, or because we have done incomplete revascularization and some of the vessels which were blocked were not grafted. Also, aspirin and resistance and clopidogrel resistance, which may occur up to 30% of cases, and platelet reactivity have been implicated in a recent article as the causes for early graft failure. If the graft fails within 30 days up to 1 year, that's called early graft failure. And this is because of this process called fibroendothelial hyperplasia. Now, fibroendothelial hyperplasia is a normal physiological response. The difference in the size of the conduit and the coronary artery is bridged with endothelial hyperplasia so that laminar flow is maintained. If this normal physiological process is carried a bit too far, then it becomes pathological, and if it is more than 1 year, it is usually progression of atherosclerosis. Now, as I told you, very early when a patient has ischemia, most often we call it pericarditis or spasm or musculoskeletal pain. But believe you me, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a surgeon, it hurts me, but almost 75% of early symptoms less than 30 days are due to graft failure. And therefore we must realize that even if Lima, which we say is the gold standard, may fail in up to 5 to 7% of cases early. So we must be, the point I want to drive home is that we must be alive to the patient's symptoms and to recurrent ischemia, even following a bypass surgery and an angioplasty. Now, what are the guidelines regarding indications of redo surgery? According to the American guidelines, if the patient has got disabling angina despite maximum and optimum medical therapy, or if he has class 1 indication for surgery for native triple vessel with all grafts blocked, then that's a class 1 indication for a redo surgery. And if the patient has got large area of threatened myocardium by non-invasive study, even if the patient is asymptomatic, that will be a class 2A indication for a redo surgery. Now, if a patient has no angina, then we have to demonstrate objective evidence of ischemia. If the grafts are blocked and the patient is asymptomatic, a lot of time from commercial angle we see, we the surgeons would advise intervention. No, there is no evidence-based medicine supporting that unless you have a big area of myocardium which is in jeopardy. Now, what are the problems? The problems are re-entry, because, everything gets plastered together. There is incidence of almost 10% re-sternotomy injuries to the heart and the structures therein. And whenever that occurs, it's a very high mortality. If during sternotomy you get a cardiac injury, the mortality is as high as 25% despite your best of efforts. So you have to be very, very careful when you've got a patent internal mammary artery, because in redo surgery we may damage up to 5 to 40% is the incidence reported in literature, but most with the current level of experience with redo would say about 5% of the mammaries can get damaged if they are patent. And again, as I repeat, last slide which I showed you, re-sternotomy injuries are associated with a high mortality. Even a patent Lima injury is associated with a very high morbidity and mortality, and therefore we have to do certain special techniques to avoid that. Then location of coronary arteries. Look at this. That is a primary surgery. All vessels are seen on surface, and look, the completely plastered heart. When you dissect, you may not see the coronary arteries on the epicardial surface. Then, patent grafts, which are degenerated grafts, are a big, big problem, because all this muck present in these grafts during dissection, during handling, can go distally and produce an embolism. So we have to be very careful when we are dissecting these grafts. Again, because it's a redo surgery, atherosclerosis has progressed over the previous 10 years or whatever it is from the previous surgery. You find, second time when you go in, the targets are not particularly good. They are chronic total occlusion, diffusely diseased small caliber arteries. And whenever you have this kind of a thing, what you end up in a redo surgery is incomplete revascularization in up to 1/3 of papers, and that is the current evidence. Likoski et al. In Annals Thoracic Surgery just about a year back. Also, because you are dissecting the heart, lot of pleuropericardial and mediastinal epicardial collaterals, they got all, we have to dissect it all. So those collaterals which were bringing blood to the heart, they have been totally disrupted, and if you are not able to give a good anastomosis, then you can even make the patient worse after a redo surgery. What to talking of keeping him stable, he may be worse off than what he was preoperatively. So one has to be very careful in these aspects. And then one has to also be aware about non-cardiac atherosclerosis. Other organs, carotid, liver, kidneys, all may be atherosclerosed. Peripheral vascular disease, suppose you have to use an intra-aortic balloon pump, that can create an issue. Then atheromas in the aorta, and when you are cannulating the aorta or applying a side biter to put the top end of the anastomosis, these can embolize and produce cerebrovascular accident.
So all these things produce a redo as much a surgical challenge, same amount it's a challenge to the anesthetist also, because these patients are advanced stage, they may have pulmonary arterial hypertension and LV dysfunction, they may have sometimes to give single lung anesthesia, especially if you're talking of minimally invasive surgery. So it's a big challenge to the anesthetist, and as against a lot of time we hear, oh, redo is no issue. No, there is evidence, absolute incontrovertible evidence that redo CABG has much higher morbidity and mortality. Look at the STS national database, mortality 2% for first operation, 5% for redo, and subsequent, morbidity is also much higher. Again, Algoni et al., 2012, it is not that it was there in earlier era. Even currently, we find hospital mortality, re-operative CABG is an incremental risk factor, a standalone incremental risk factor for mortality. Again, a very recent publication in Annals, urgency of surgery, age more than 70, 2 previous sternotomy, peripheral vascular disease, renal failure, they were all independent predictors of mortality in a redo surgery. If you look at second time and third time surgeries, the numbers go down, but as you see here, hospital mortality increases sequentially as the redo goes from the first redo to the second redo and the third redo. But once you have done a redo operation, then you look at the survival overall as well as event-free survival. It is a very satisfactory 70 to 90%. And if you look at 70 to 90% of a patient who is 10 years older than the previous surgery, most of them are old, so these results are very gratifying. And this survival advantage has been seen in not one but n number of series, starting from 1980s to 2011. Look at 5-year and 10-year survival rates. They are very satisfactory. So if you can evaluate your patients well, and if you make sure that you are not going to make him worse than what he was as far as his ischemia was concerned, then there are all advantages. So most important thing about redo is, as they say for a management lesson, never start a project unless all resources are available. You must work up your case very well before you subject it for a redo surgery. All patients must have a lateral chest X-ray to show the space between the heart and the sternum, so that you don't get the sternum, during the sternotomy you don't get the heart. CT scan and MRI scan can be very useful. Look at the CT scan, dilated, calcified grafts full of muck. Once you know such information is available to you freehand, you can plan your surgery. You can keep your dissection away from these areas. And it has been shown that once you use CT guided, sternotomies and dissection of the heart, the composite primary endpoints decreased to 17% when a CT was used versus 24% when CT was not used. And this is with other authors also. Same thing about MRI. You can see that layered thrombus in a saphenous vein graft. So once you know that, that's the danger area, better to keep away. Then echocardiography is a must. You will get to see the LV function, any valvular pathology. Look at, a clot there. So you know that, look, we're not going to manipulate the hearts too much. And even if we have to, we'll go on a heart-lung machine and then handle this. Then, viability, we have already said that we must have either disabling symptoms, not controlled, or we must objectively demonstrate viability. Therefore, it is very important that we do some form of a stress testing if the patient happens to be asymptomatic, and we just do not take the patient just because his grafts are blocked. Again, conduit evaluation is very important, because in first surgery they would have been used and what limited is left behind, and then as the patient is 10 years older, we need to evaluate all other subsystems, what is his pulmonary function, renal function, and so on and so forth. There are certain special techniques. This is not a surgical audience, but I will try and take 2 minutes and run through very simple few techniques. Now, for example, if you find that the heart is stuck to the sternum, there is a patent lemma, then we can use alternative approaches to median sternotomy. We can use an enterolateral thoracotomy, we can use a posterolateral thoracotomy, and even a subxiphoid, transabdominal, transdiaphragmatic approach has been used to graft the right coronary artery and the distal LAD. So, depending on the coronary anatomy that you have, and you may even give them hybrid procedures. Through this route, relatively pristine field, you may do LAD and RCA, and maybe you can offer an angioplasty to the circumflex system. Similarly, if you find aorta is heavily atherosclerosed, instead of putting the top end to the aorta, you can put it to axillary artery, to descending aorta, to anything you can do that. The second important thing I've already told, look at this heavily degenerated graft, patent and flowing. But if this graft is manipulated, look at the operative photograph of how this degenerated graft is full of thrombus. If this is manipulated and if this thrombus goes into the distal circulation, well, that's going to produce a massive perioperative infarct. Then we use certain special techniques of one, recycling the IMA, that if the IMA is blocked only at the anastomosis, you can dissect the whole length, discard the distal 1 centimeter or so, and then re-implant it. And in a recent publication by Aumari, they showed that if they recycle, you know, the 1 year and 5 year survival rates are excellent, and these mammaries work well. You may use alternative conduits like the radial artery, the gastropiploic, the inferior epigastric, and out of all these grafts, radial artery has been validated as a single most important graft in preference to saphenous vein. Early mortality, 1 year and 5 year survival rates, much better when we use radial artery for a redo as against saphenous vein. Again, you know, if you look at the angiographic findings of partial and complete occlusion, saphenous vein, much higher occlusion rates as compared to radial artery, and that's statistically significant. Again, recent publication by Ali et al., radial artery in redo, they found that non-use of radial artery was an independent predictor of perioperative mortality. So we tried to go for, if we have used one mammary, we can use the opposite mammary and the radial artery, and then you can use the same length of vein or artery to do multiple or sequential grafts. So on one only you can put 2-3 anastomoses, or you can do Y graft and such things. Then off-pump versus pump surgery, there has been some recent, you know, what shall I say, debate on that, but redo in off-pump and redo surgery also has been validated. If you look at Mishra et al., redo cabbage, off-pump versus pump, look at the, you know, in-hospital mortality, 3% for off-pump versus 7.5% for pump. And if you look at the other morbidities, better in off-pump as compared to pump surgery. Same thing by Vora et al., even that 5-year actuarial survival and event-free survival, they are at least non-inferior to pump surgery, or maybe even marginally superior. Even midterm results at 4 years, 95% patency, and only problem with op-cab in reduced cabbage is, which is there in primary cabbage also, you know, a lot of studies, the Ruby trial and others have come, which said that the off-pump gives less complete revascularization. Now that is an important thing, but then that comes with experience, and you know, if you are sufficiently experienced, that should not be a factor. So to sum up, ladies and gentlemen, certainly redo procedures are challenging, and they have increased mortality as well as morbidity attached to them. Whenever sternotomy is a problem, though for multivessel we still prefer sternotomy, but if need be, we can go for alternative approaches, and alternative approach whenever, no matter what approach we take, you know, arterial conduits with complete revascularization should be our motto. And in this is one situation, believe you me, as a surgeon, we always welcome our cardiology colleagues, and whenever they can handle for us with PCI, I think that's always a first choice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Yadav. It was an excellent presentation on redo surgery. Redo surgery, as he says, is a very challenging task for the surgeon, and it has many aspects to it, particularly deciding how much myocardium under duopardy to revascularize. That is a very big task before the surgery. So redo surgery is not an easy task. Only when angioplasty is not suitable, patient not suitable for angioplasty, they have to plan for a redo surgery. But redo surgery is definitely a thing which is very challenging. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Give a big hand.
There won't be any questions, only comment, because it's just oration. Any comment? Comment only? If there are questions, then there will be only at the tea time you can have. Okay? I think let's give a big hand to OP for his outstanding presentation.